I'm Nate Storey, and I am one of the guys here at Bright Agritech. And if you guys have watched our other webinars, and we've already introduced ourselves, but we are aquaponic farmers here in Laramie, Wyoming. We've got a farm down in Colorado as well. And then, of course, we produce and sell the vertical growing towers, zip grow towers. And we've got a lot of farmers all over the U.S., all over the world now that are using our towers to sell to their local markets, either selling to restaurants, selling to grocery stores, that kind of thing, with great success. So part of the reason that we do these webinars is to really give you guys the confidence, equip you to go out and look at your local markets and start thinking about the opportunity there, and then start thinking about the possibility of using towers in your communities to grow efficiently, reduce your labor costs, and just really basically access those markets for as well as a small operation can. So today we're going to go over kind of the pros and cons of restaurants, and this is really important, you guys, so make sure you're paying attention. Restaurants are a unique market, okay? And they're not like a lot of other markets, so you have to be thinking about some very unique things when you're approaching restaurants. We're going to talk about restaurant accounts, just kind of how they're put together, similar along the same lines as we did in the grocery store webinar. Restaurants are a lot simpler in a lot of ways, but it's still something to be thinking about and understand kind of the dynamic there between the chefs, which are kind of the people that you're talking with for the most part, and the owners or the managers, which oftentimes kind of call the final shots there. So we're going to talk about the sales process. How do you approach them? How do you get into restaurants? How do you price what you're selling? And this is another important one. You guys, if you've listened to my previous webinars, you know that I harp on pricing a lot. And I'm going to continue to harp on pricing because so many small producers really undersell themselves on the front end. And once you undersell yourself on the front end, it is really hard to claw your way back up to the pricing that your product really deserves. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk a little bit about compliance and just your responsibility as a grower to your customers as far as safety and all that. And I'm going to talk about just kind of summarize with some of the key points. And these are the restaurant takeaways there. So yeah, I'm Nate Storey, and I help run Bright Agritech here along with my partners, Chris and Paul. And then, of course, our staff here. They're just great folks, and we really enjoy what we do. We farm here in Laramie, and we've got, of course, our farm down in Colorado. It is a lot of fun. It's what we love to do, and we really love to equip other people to farm as well. That's where our passions lie. So, talking about restaurants, pros and cons. Some of the pros of working with restaurants are that you're working with a really local market. So instead of working with something that's spread out, distributing within a certain grocery store chain where your distribution is a little bit more spread out with restaurants, oftentimes there are ones in your local community, maybe a mile or two from where you're at. It enables you as a small producer. It makes it much more possible for you to do your own distribution on the front end. It makes it really easy for you to get into these markets and start selling to these restaurants. And of course, one of the beauties of local too is that it gives your produce more value, right? So everyone wants local product these days. If you're selling locally, you can mark up your product. It's the cheapest, easiest value-added product process you can have. It's just growing a little bit closer to your market. Chefs are also usually really appreciative of high-quality produce. So trained chefs can appreciate what they work with. They especially now with kind of foodie culture, chefs view themselves as artists, right? They view themselves as artists, and they don't want to work with second-rate garbage. So keep that in mind. If you can sell these chefs on the value, on the freshness, on the quality of what you have, they are going to be your biggest fans. And as your biggest fans, they're going to be willing to pay you a lot of money for your product, okay? So they're willing to pay relatively high wholesale pricing to get your product. And that's an important thing to keep in mind too, because a lot of people undersell themselves on pricing. Chefs are often willing to work with live product, okay? So they appreciate freshness, and if you can explain to them, for the folks that are using our towers, kind of how towers work, they really like it. So, down in Colorado now, we're working with a distributor down there. Instead of doing even our own distribution to these restaurants, now we're working with a small local distributor who can run towers out to restaurants as they order for us. So, the chefs there are pumped about live product. They get the ultimate freshness, right? They don't have product rotting in a clamshell. They don't get a delivery from Cisco or Shamrock Foods or whoever, every 2 weeks, and they've got to work with 2-week-old product. They get fresh, brand new, today fresh kind of stuff, and they love that. So another nice thing is there, almost anywhere you go, there are lots of restaurants, right? It's not like small communities, say in our area in Wyoming. Oftentimes you'll have maybe one grocery store per town, maybe 2 grocery stores per town. But you'll always have 5, 6, 10, 15, 20 restaurants. And that's a great little market because it allows you, even if the grocery stores won't work with you or they're too much hassle or something like that, you can still get into restaurants and start selling. It's also a very personable kind of a market. And this is both a pro and a con. But, just as one of the pros, it requires and allows you to go and meet with them and really explain your product. This is a great opportunity for you because you can sell your product more than anyone else can. So it's listed both as a pro and a con here. It's also, this is a powerful component of your overall sales portfolio. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this in a little more detail later. But I very seldom encourage someone to pursue 100% restaurants 100% of the time. And just because we found out it's a little bit of a fickle market. It's a little less stable than, say, other markets, but the margins are very nice. So what we usually say is, unless you're set up to service hundreds of restaurants or many, many restaurants, view restaurants as part of your sales portfolio. So you're selling to restaurants, you're selling to consumers, you're selling to grocery stores, something like that. So view it in that context. So the cons of this are that owners and chefs can often disagree on how to spend money. Okay, a lot of the time, if the chef does not own the restaurant, the owner gives the chef a budget, and if the chef kind of pushes back on the budget a little bit, says, "I want fresher stuff," the owners can oftentimes veto certain things, and there's oftentimes a lot of tension in that relationship. FYI. So owners don't always appreciate high quality ingredients; they appreciate the bottom line. Right? They're there to make money. The chefs are less concerned about making money, more concerned about producing something beautiful. So that's an important dynamic to keep in mind when you're approaching restaurants, thinking about selling to restaurants. They can also be really time intensive as far as maintaining accounts. Okay, so you have to spend more time maintaining those accounts than you would, say, with other types of sales. Oftentimes, you got to meet with the chefs, you got to talk with them, et cetera, et cetera. So there's more management there, more logistic costs in distributing to lots of small accounts as opposed to one large one. But at the same time, the margins can be very good, and it can be a really great market to be in. So restaurant accounts, let's talk about these a little bit. This is actually this here in the slide. This is a picture of Honey Salt Restaurant in Las Vegas, and Marilyn down there at Cowboy Trails Farm. I think they're Fresh Start Greens now is selling to this particular restaurant. So I mean, there's folks doing this, and the restaurants really love this stuff. So they can be really great markets for small producers. And oftentimes these are restaurants that are interested in high quality ingredients. They're interested in boutique or specialty crops. So this is something to keep in mind when you're considering growing for these accounts. Think about specialty or boutique crops. Think about custom growing. Think about special things you can do for each account. And they're often willing to pay very reasonable prices, if not slightly higher than average, for high quality produce. Okay, and this isn't going to be across all categories. It's only going to be for certain categories of produce because a lot of the time, they lack, nothing convinces them to spend money on high quality stuff than suffering from the lack of it from, say, a traditional distributor. Okay, so oftentimes they'll say something like, we have a hard time getting quality arugula. If you can grow us high quality arugula, we'll pay you whatever you want. So you start with arugula, you get your foot in the door with arugula, and then you kind of can expand it from there. they often feel at the mercy of food distributors and delivery schedules. So this plays into that whole willingness to work with you because, especially for instance in our area, some of these restaurants get deliveries of things like, say, basil every 2 weeks. They'll get a couple pounds of basil every 2 weeks. Well, how high quality is that basil after 2 weeks in their cooler? It's terrible. It's awful. It's not good. And the problem is that there's minimum quantities from these distributors. It's expensive to get some of these high quality, very perishable products in, and the delivery schedules, they're at the mercy of these delivery schedules. So this is something to feel out when you're talking to them. Make a note of it. Ask them about who's serving them currently, what their delivery schedules are, and how you can improve on it. And as a side note on this, I'm going to talk about on-call restaurant sales down in this course of this slideshow. And it's something that we do for some of our local restaurants that they love. So they can ring us up on the phone. They can say, I am out of mint. Can you bring me some mint right now? And Noah hops in the car with, a pound of mint, runs out there, and we put it on their tab. And that's because we live in a small enough community we can do that. But this is something that we can do to deliver value to these guys. We're charging them more for the product, but they get it fresh whenever they need it. And that's that's head and shoulders above what Cisco or Shamrock or some of these big distributors can offer them. So they get high quality stuff. They can get it on a moment's notice. They can get it locally. It's a selling point for them. It's great for everyone. And of course, for these chefs, a lot of, farm to table restaurants, a lot of local food restaurants now are starting to spring up, and feedback from their customers on the quality, on the value of eating local food is becoming very important to these chefs. It's almost like it's kind of a social consciousness that's coming to the surface now. People want to support their community. They want to keep their money local. They want the local commerce to be bolstered. So this is becoming a very important aspect of this whole thing as well. So keep that in mind. This is man, we're doing a lot of advertising for Maryland today. This is a picture of in the Aliante Alliance. I don't know how you even say that. A casino down in Las Vegas. They've got a bunch of towers hung up in one of their storage areas there. Looks pretty cool. So the chef is who you will be talking with. Okay, so anytime you're interested in a restaurant account, the first person you need to connect with is the chef. Okay, this is the person who decides what the kitchen purchase is because they're deciding the menus. Right? So they pick the menus, they pick the ingredients. Sometimes they have to propose it to the manager or the owner or whatever. But they're really the folks that are responsible for the kind of the creative vision, the components, the ingredients, all of that stuff, that goes through the chef. So you start with the chef, okay? And you've got to sell the chef on the value of your product when it comes to their ability to produce really high quality dishes. And some chefs aren't going to care, right? The guy at the Greasy Spoon Diner, he doesn't really care that much about the quality of his greens. But, for other restaurants where they serve lots of salads, restaurants where their customers like green stuff, selling them on the quality of that product can be really, really important to getting that account. So they make most of the day-to-day decisions in most restaurants, okay? Managing staff, developing menus, picking ingredients. And they're the first person you want to get a hold of. You sell them on freshness and quality. Then you have to talk to the boss, right? And oftentimes in these restaurants, the chef is not the person running the show. There's oftentimes a manager or an owner that cuts the checks. Now, hopefully if they're a well-run restaurant, that owner or manager is basically giving the chef a budget and says, hey, use your discretion and go ahead and go ahead and buy what you need, buy what's important to you, but stay inside the budget. If they can buy your stuff and stay inside that budget, that's great. But sometimes, to get the highest quality stuff, to get stuff that's really going to give their dishes that extra, wow factor or whatever, that marketing value, they have to go to the boss, go to the manager, and get more money. And so if you are involved in that process, you have to sell the boss on value, right? They're interested in return on investment. They're interested in reputation. They're interested in making this business successful. next month and 2 years from now and 5 years from now. So this is almost like in the grocery store pitch I talked about general managers versus produce managers. This is almost like the general manager of the store. You sell the produce manager, then they advocate to you, to the manager, the owner. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, this is less common than, say, in grocery stores. You'll have to go talk to the general manager every time for a grocery store. But for restaurants, a lot of the time the chef owns the restaurant, or a lot of the time the chef has a budget and discretionary spending, and it makes it a lot easier. So keep that in mind as you approach a restaurant. Oftentimes, you have to sell the owner or the manager on the product. So another aspect of this is that the owner typically cuts the checks, right? So the chef doesn't always he may authorize things, but he doesn't always cut the checks. So owners may choose or choose not to pay vendors, and this can be a problem. Not necessarily out of malice or spite. Oftentimes they're just disorganized. Oftentimes they just kind of run behind schedule, whatever. But this can be a big problem for you as a grower. And because they're a smaller organization, they're less organized in this regard. So payment can always be a little bit of an issue. Or even worst case scenario, they can fire the chef. Right? And we've had this happen to us. We've had this happen with our accounts, where the ownership decides that the chef, this isn't the right chef for them. They fire the chef, and all of a sudden the person that has been advocating for you, the person that is excited about your product that you've been investing in, is gone. And this is a problem because getting that account requires investment, not just time, labor, money, but it also represents an advocate that you lose. And sometimes, honestly, sometimes you lose that person because they are advocating so strongly, not necessarily for you, but for local food, for more expensive, high quality stuff. There's always this tension between management and chefs regarding the quality of the product that's being used. So this is kind of something to keep in mind. It's important to consider when you're viewing restaurant accounts. Turnover can be high depending on what restaurants you're marketing to. So managers, they like the cheap distributors, right? Because they're cheap and they're bottom line kind of people, unfortunately, a lot of the time. So you got to keep that in mind. You've got to sell the managers on your value. If they get rid of the chef, they will almost always look at going back to, say, a distributor. And you can see here we've got a truck of a distributor. I think we've blurred everything out so you can't tell who that distributor is pretty well. So, I mean, this is an example of what a distributor's truck might look like. We're not naming any names. But, these guys, they're selling relatively inexpensive stuff on a schedule, set pricing, and it's really convenient for managers when it comes to predicting cash flows, predicting cash going out the door. So it's something to consider. There are a lot of questions popping up right now in the chat. We will address these at the end, so feel free to keep asking those questions because they're great questions. So for a long-term account with these guys, you have to have everyone sold on your product. And a lot of the time, that just comes down to your passion, right? If you can get them pumped up about what you're selling, if you can get them pumped up about what you're selling, then oftentimes, develop that relationship. Oftentimes they'll stick with you. But it oftentimes means that you have a relationship with everyone involved in the process, which can be a little bit time intensive. So I'll talk about that a little bit later, about the time required of you to manage the account versus, say, like a grocery store account. So as far as the sales process goes, step one, approach the chef, sell them on your product, and kind of feel out what the pricing and logistics would work with. Maybe make a proposal to him, give him kind of a ballpark estimate of what you could do for him. Step two is, make sure that the chef knows that you're available to anyone else in the chain of command to come and sell this product, okay? To come talk about your passion for the product, to make them feel passionate about your product, about its freshness, about its availability, about the fact that it's local, et cetera, et cetera. And, Part of this is addressing their concerns about, your product. And, through this process, I'm going to say the most important thing is getting everyone excited about what you're doing and offering. And enthusiasm goes so far, not just in fostering and getting those relationships set up in the first place, but as far as maintaining those relationships and really keeping people pumped. Like I said, grace on the part of your customers is always a great thing. Whether it's your CSA, whether it's a grocery store, you're going to have hiccups, you're going to have mistakes, and having people that can be very gracious about it. A lot of that comes down to relationship, and a lot of it comes down to having them on your side. And you get them on your side by building that relationship. You get them on your side by being passionate and really pumped up about what you're doing. Step 3 is putting together your production schedule. Okay, so you need to figure out all the different processes that are going to be involved to grow the product, to plant the product, grow the product, deliver the product. Pick up empty towers from your restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. How do they want the product delivered? What kind of a schedule do they want it delivered on? And basically, you need to start growing it. Once you guys come to a agreement, you need to be able to turn around and implement a plan. You have to come to do that. You have to come to terms on the relationship. What do they want? How much do they want? We're talking what quantity, what volume. Can you offer on-call delivery? I mean, if you're a small producer in a relatively small area, on-call delivery can be a really great tool in your arsenal, especially if you are kind of a mid-sized or larger small producer and you've got kind of a high school kid sitting around all day doing grunt labor, and you have the option to stick them in a little delivery car, zip them across town, and drop off, for a minimum order amount of, $50 or something, drop off herbs or greens or whatever they need on call. This is a huge, huge deal to restaurants. If you can offer on-call delivery, man, you can get so many more accounts. We do it here locally, and the folks that we offer on-call delivery to, they will be our customers for a very long time. Just because it's really, really convenient. It eliminates a lot of the stress on their part as far as planning ahead, making sure they have enough inventory on hand. If they have a crazy week, we just need to make sure we're overproducing for them, of course. But if they have a crazy week and they go through a lot of, say, mint in any given week, they know that they can call us up, and we've always got an extra 30 pounds in the greenhouse that we can go out and cut. It's not going to go bad. It's going to stay fresh, good shape. We can always go out, cut it, and deliver it. How will you bill them, and how will they pay? So this is always a biggie. Make sure that you're getting decent terms. Of course, cash is always best, right? Cash is king. So if you can deliver stuff and the chef can pay you cash, all the better. Or with a check right there on the spot, all the better. But a lot of restaurants, especially mid-sized to larger ones, will want to do like a net 30 a monthly billing, and that's something that you should entertain if your business model can support it. Custom grown crops or custom techniques. This is something to consider as well. When we talk about delivering value, we're talking about how do we make their life easier? How do we give them a better product? How can everyone's situation be improved through this relationship? And custom grown crops or custom techniques can be a part of that. So think about, when you talk to them, ask them, what do you want the most? What's not just on your utility list? Okay, we go through a lot of greens. We have a hard time getting in fresh spinach and blah, blah, blah. Okay, you need spinach. That's clear. But if you could work with anything, what would you work with? We've had customers ask for mache, like this little South American, actually it's not, it's French. This little French green. It's very good, very kind of tastes floral and very delicious, but kind of rare, really expensive, $20 a pound. And they're like, could you grow that? So we said, yeah, we'll grow that. We didn't grow an awful lot for them, but just the fact that we were growing a custom crop for them meant an awful lot. And that earns a lot of customer loyalty, a lot of, that gets you to a lot of customer satisfaction. And it opens their eyes to the potential for the relationship, right? So when you say, I can grow something custom for you, deliver it in a custom way, they hear that, and that's something that they've never been offered before. Okay, no one has offered them that before. Cisco has not offered them that. Shamrock has not offered them that. These custom little products, that you're using in small volumes, and not a whole lot of other people want. Cost them an arm and a leg, but as a small producer, you have a unique opportunity to grow that product for them and really, really make them happy. So ask them about it. Do a little research. Don't commit to anything, of course, on the front end until you know what crop it is and you understand it well, but think about that. Use it as an opportunity to offer something special to them, okay? Offer them something special that no one else can give them. It can be on-call delivery. It can be special crops, special techniques, whatever you want. Think about it, offer it to them, and you can get a loyal customer for life because they love that. And they love being able to one-up each other, okay? Chefs love being able to one-up each other. So if one's getting mache and another one in town isn't, and the guy who's getting mache is getting mache from you because you're custom growing it for them, they can say, oh, I've got a custom grown product. I'm a big shot, and this guy across town buying his stuff from Shamrock is, good luck. So think about that. Always think about what you can be doing special for these customers. And this process of offering them something valuable is just emphasizing your value to them, the value of your relationship. Your produce may be more expensive, but it has more value per dollar, right? Your relationship might be more convenient. It might be all of these things, but really at the end of the day, what you're offering them in your product, in your relationship, in their opportunity to call you and get what they need on an emergency basis or on-call basis is value. So always be thinking about value. But on the front end, use this opportunity to communicate your limitations as well. So you need to make it clear to these chefs that you are not dealing, they are not dealing with a big producer that can deliver tons of stuff with regularity. Now you can shoot for that, and there's already a question about seasonality that's come up. But you need to express your limitations, whether they're seasonal limitations, production limitations, crop limitations. In the wintertime, if you're producing in a greenhouse, are you using supplemental lighting? Will you be able to maintain your level of production through the winter? This is a huge deal, and this is actually one of the reasons I do encourage people to consider greenhouse production, because a lot of these farm-to-table restaurants really struggle in off-season months. They're an idea, farm-to-table is a great idea, but when it comes to supply, it can be very challenging for these restaurants, right? Because of the seasonality of so many things. And you don't want to just be serving, smoked bacon and root crops all winter long because nothing else is available as a farm-to-table restaurant. So for a small producer approaching them, think about what you can do to try and keep your production a little bit more consistent. Try to think about what you can be doing to produce maybe all year as opposed to just during the summer or something like that. And make sure that your limitations, or your anticipated limitations, are understood by the chef. You don't want any misconceptions on the front end because you're building a relationship. You're building a relationship based on value and trust. And if they call you in an emergency and they say, "Hey, where are my heads of lettuce this week?" and you're like, "Oh well, we're not going to have lettuce for the next month and a half because daylight hours are just too short. We're not doing supplemental lighting and blah blah blah." Of course, they're going to be a little stressed out about that. Now, oftentimes, it's good to say, that I'll put it this way. Oftentimes, they're not going to give up their big distributor, right? They're not going to give up Cisco or Shamrock or whoever and go 100% over to you. So there's some options there as far as, hey, I'm going to supply you with this product for this amount of time or in this quantity. Additional products, over my production limitations will have to come from somewhere else. If they understand that, then of course they can make some plans to get in additional products somewhere else. So be thinking about that. Talk about your crop limitations, your seasonality. Talk about your control, your insect control. Talk about all these things with them. Make sure they understand your limitations so they're not disappointed. At this point, after everything is kind of out on the table and you guys have talked about what you're going to be producing for them, get going. I mean, you got to get producing. And this is kind of the importance of having that production set schedule already put together. Because as soon as you get the go-ahead from your account, you just start cranking, right? You start producing. And you grow. And you let them know kind of the start date. What's the date you want to start this account? And get cracking on that supply. So Step 6, once you have the account in motion, once you have the sales cycle in motion, once you're supplying product, you have to maintain this account. And I cannot emphasize this enough for this particular type of account. You have to maintain the account. Okay, you can't just come by and dump your product every week and walk away. You have to talk with the chef. You have to find out what they like and don't like. Bring a notebook with you and take notes if you're managing a lot of these accounts. And you know, from a logistic perspective, this can be a little intimidating for people, but just do it. And if you are managing custom crops already, look into barcodes. If you're managing custom crops for different restaurants, look into some kind of labeling system to make your life easier. But definitely, talk with the chef, find out what they like and don't like. Ask what you could do better, right? And this is always a biggie. We always hate asking people to point out flaws, to point out problems, to be critical of us. So don't be afraid to ask, what can we do better? And sometimes they're going to ask for things that you just can't do. Sometimes they're going to ask for things that you can't supply, and you just have to be honest with them and say, hey, like this is life. Think about turning cons into pros. Okay, so if they say something like, well, we're having to wash our product because we found a few aphids on the last batch, blah blah blah, and you can say, well, I use organic production techniques, and the reality is that organic production is just not as efficient at destroying and eliminating those pests as, say, traditional guys that are using systemics or whatever. And then you can go and you can explain systemics. Systemics are insecticides that the plant sucks up, into the plant itself. They're inside the plant. You can't wash them out. You eat them when you eat the produce. Yeah, it's bug-free, but it's also, full of these insecticides. Do you really want to be eating at that? And, they're considered safe, but is that something you want to offer to your customers? So, when you explain that, when you say, hey, when you use organic controls, when you're doing things responsibly, there's always going to be some bugs on stuff. That's an opportunity to take that criticism and say, hey, this is kind of the threshold that we can hit. This is the quality standards that we can hit. And, we don't want you to expect too much of us. We want you to understand why, when we're trying our hardest, this is the threshold we're going to hit. And, at the end of the day, if you have that conversation in the right way, what you can do is you can sell them on the fact that, hey, organic produce is always going to might be a little bit dirtier, might have more insects, something like that, but it's higher quality. It's more delicious, and it's safer for your customers, and you can feel good about serving it to your customers. You have to rinse it, but, life is dirty, man. Life is dirty. And you can have that conversation, and you can sell them on the value on something that they were viewing as a con before that conversation. They can walk away with and say, oh, you know what? I get this now. I understand how these people are farming, and I understand the value that this represents. A few aphids on this product, indicates that they're using good insecticides and best practices. Not a million aphids, but a few aphids. That's an indication of the quality of the product we're getting. So you can have those conversations. You can rephrase kind of the context for those conversations, and you can really do well. So long as you're having those conversations, maintaining that account, building that relationship. Again, that is 100% based on your relationship with that chef, with that purchaser. Find out how to best your competitors. Okay, who else is selling in this space? How can you outdo them? And this traditionally applies mostly to big distributors. Going back to selling value to offering special things and selling your customers on the value. That's really what it's about, right? So if you can do on-call delivery, if you can do this and that, if you can do these custom things, beautiful. Chefs will love you. They'll just love you for it. And that offers you competitive advantage. So always have that conversation. Ask where they're struggling in their supply chain. Ask how you can help. And this is a foot in the door to selling them a lot more products down the road. Keep them pumped up about what you're doing, about your products. Your excitement becomes their excitement. Their excitement becomes their customer's excitement. And you'd be surprised at how that excitement just kind of trickles down the supply chain there. So the next conversation we're going to have is about pricing. Okay, you cannot and should not price your product competitively with a food distributor's pricing. All right, at least on the front end, consider coming into the market at a higher price. That's all there is to it. You're offering more value, okay, for their money. and you can offer more value for their money at a higher price. It can be slightly higher, but if you price your product at the same price as the big distributors, you're saying, my product has the same value as these big distributors. And in the sales process, you spent the entire time talking about how what they're getting is garbage. And so, they're sold on your value. You need to price it above the price of garbage. Okay? So play up your value and price accordingly. Do not get scared of a high price. Now, I'm not talking double the cost. I'm talking, more, 20% more, something like that, 30% more. Think about what you can do. And also make sure you're selling kind of, if you can supply consistency. So for instance, basil. In the northern states, basil prices fluctuate dramatically from season to season as it becomes available and then unavailable as shipped from, South America and Southern California and yada, yada, yada. That causes a bunch of price fluctuations. So if you have greenhouse production, supplemental lighting, you can keep that basil cranking year round. You can go to that chef and say, sure, my prices are higher during the summer, but my prices are very competitive or maybe even lower during the winter. Okay? So I'm going to give you consistent pricing, predictable pricing. This is something that sales managers and sales owners really, really nicely on your accounts as opposed to chefs, right? Because they're looking for predictable cash flows and in and out. And when you can say, hey, this expense is going to be consistent summer to winter, it's going to cost you the exact same no matter what time of year it is, that becomes value to the owners, right? Because they're pricing their dishes the same. So their costs may go down during the summer, but their price on that basil dish goes way up during the winter as far as their cost goes. But the price to the customers typically stays the same. Customers don't like prices going up and down. So if you can come in and give them something predictable, say, hey, raise your price to this cost, if you have to use fresher, higher quality ingredients, your customers will understand that value. And then it's predictable year round because I'm going to sell you this product at the same price no matter what. So that's something to consider. And a question just came up regarding figuring out the sourcing for these products. Ask the chefs. They're going to tell you exactly what they're paying. And they're going to tell you where they're getting it from. Now you have to be canny, right? You can't just take them at their word necessarily because they're not going to always be completely honest with you. If you ask them what price they're paying for basil, they're going to give you their lowest price, right? They're going to give you the lowest price they paid during the year because they want to pay the lowest price for your product. They want your product, but they want the lowest price possible. So be thoughtful about it. Check out kind of the hub pricing. You can just Google distribution hub pricing. There's major hubs all over the U.S. and they publish the daily prices for all of these greens and herbs and other agricultural produce. And this is the price that distributors are purchasing at. So that's going to give you an idea. Distributors are taking usually around a 20-30% margin. So you can tack that 20-30% margin on and you know what they're probably offering that produce to their customers for. So if the chef says, oh, I'm paying $3 a pound for basil, you might say, okay, you're paying $3 a pound for crap basil in the middle of the summer when the price bottoms out. What are you paying during the winter? You can look at those hub pricings, historical data. You can figure out, oh, they're paying $16 a pound in the middle of the winter. So that gives you a little bit better idea when you go in and start negotiating with them. Remember, you're providing value. Price accordingly. We price our herbs and greens kind of at a standard pricing across the board. We encourage all of our tower customers to do the same. We wholesale at $2 an ounce for herbs. We wholesale at $3 to $5 per pound for greens. That is high, comparatively high price-wise. But I will tell you, our customers understand the value of what we are bringing them. They understand it very closely, and we don't get complaints. Okay. And so as part of that, we also do delivery on this stuff, and it makes it a really easy choice for guys that have struggled with delivery schedules in their supply chain. They know they can call us and get what they need when they need it for the most part. That's a really big deal. I can't say that enough. That is a really, really big deal. So $2 an ounce for herbs, $3 to $5 a pound for greens. And most likely, if you live in a large metropolitan area, you can get that pricing, no problem, for your crops wholesale. So to put that in perspective, we're talking $32 a pound for our herbs and $3 to $5 a pound for greens. So that's a really, really great deal. It's definitely worth following up on. So another big mistake that people kind of make is that they work out these little individual deals with individual folks. Now, figure out what you're going to charge on the front end. If you want to do like bulk discounts, if you want to do like minimum order discounts, if you want to charge for the account like a minimum weekly order quantity or a fee on the week that's canceled out by orders later in the week, whatever. You can set up your own special little deals all day long. It becomes really confusing. It becomes kind of difficult. So just have a set pricing, okay? Just decide what you're going to charge and who you're going to charge it to. You can do bulk discounts so they understand, hey, if I order this much, I get a 10% discount or 5% discount on the price, whatever. That's a little bit easier to do. But don't go around charging different chefs different prices for the same product because they talk, right? They share a lot of the staff, so there's a lot of turnover in restaurant staff. The dishwasher from restaurant A may go to restaurant C after he has a blow up with the chef at restaurant A or someone there. And dishwasher knows your pricing, right? Maybe dishwasher is taking the produce in and passing it off to the manager. Somehow, someone knows what you're charging and what's being paid. And when dishwasher C moves over to the new place and he finds out that the new chef is paying more for the product, he's going to tell the chef that. And so these are relational things. Make sure you're charging everyone the same price. Don't go messing around with charging different pricing for different people because it's going to come back and it's going to probably bite you. So just charge a flat rate, maybe with a bulk discount or a graduated kind of pricing structure for to take into account bulk pricing. Don't devalue your product, okay, or give others the opportunity to do so. So if some guy really wheels and deals and really gets your price down, understand that most likely that is a price that at some point you're going to have to offer to someone else. Okay, so don't just think this is going to be a one-off thing. To get this account, I'm going to give this guy really low pricing because eventually someone's going to come to you and say, well, I want this pricing on my mint. And you'll say, hey, man, I can't do that. I'll go out of business. They're like, well, you're giving it to chef whoever over here. And then you're stuck because then you have to explain to him why you're giving one of his competitors a better deal than him. And there's nothing that sours a relationship like feeling like you're being cheated or feeling like things aren't fair. So keep that in mind. Compliance is kind of the last thing in this show that I want to talk about. Compliance can be a little bit tricky with restaurants because there is really not a whole lot of oversight. Okay, so there's not really, at least here in the States, in most states, there's really no one that comes and inspects you. Most chefs don't know what's required as far as a lot of this compliance work goes. So you basically have you bear the burden of making sure that you're using best practices, that you're being safe, that you're treating your customers with respect. And, a lot of this is just standard agricultural management practices. And I talked about this a little bit on grocery stores. The next webinar actually is going to be a compliance webinar. We're going to talk about compliance stuff. Well, what I'm going to say for restaurants is behave the same way, produce the exact same ways you would for a grocery store, even though there are no requirements made of you to do so. Okay? So if you're selling to a restaurant, you want to be using best agricultural practices. You want to be you want to be wise. You want to be safe. You want to be doing the right thing for yourself, for your customers. It pays off in the long run. Okay? So go ahead and get inspected. Make sure you have insurance, all of that kind of stuff, and make sure you're maintaining a log. Make sure that you are doing everything, tracking your products, tracking your inventory, tracking where things are going. Make sure that you're doing these things, okay? Because it's not a big deal until it's a big deal, right? And you want to be able to say to your customers, I am doing my best work for you. I am doing the best job I possibly can to make sure this product is safe, to make sure it's high quality, to make sure you're getting something great, right? So make sure you're doing that. And if you have any questions on that, go back and watch the grocery store webinar. It's online. And I talk in a little more detail about safety and compliance, insurance, all of that stuff. And there are some questions there at the end as well that I answer on insurance. But carry insurance and use best practices. So restaurants are totally unregulated, but that is no excuse for not selling high quality, safe produce. The onus is on you. It's still your responsibility to sell something quality, okay? And just because it's the Wild West doesn't mean you can behave like it's the Wild West. So that's just kind of something to keep in mind. So wrapping up here, some of the takeaways here. These are the kind of the key points that I want you to walk away from this with. Restaurants can be a great way to sell locally. First off, they're a great market. I don't want anyone to interpret it as anything else. They can give you great margins. Okay, you can have excellent margins with restaurants. You can sell at great wholesale pricing to restaurants, and if you've got enough of them, you can make a lot of money on restaurants. Okay, but they are very personal accounts. They're the kind of thing where you have to be following up on. They take more time than, say, a grocery store account as a function of the product that you move through them. So there's a higher logistic cost there. There's a higher cost as far as your time goes. You're oftentimes doing the delivery, especially if you're doing on-call stuff. So you're doing the delivery, you're interacting with these folks. You may talk with them an hour a week. I don't know what that is worth to you, but that is something you have to keep in mind. And you have to be calling to stay on top of reorders. Okay, a lot of restaurants, like it or not, are pretty disorganized. So if you want to make sure you continue to sell to those accounts, you have to follow up with them regularly, ask them if they need anything, ask them if you can get them this product, ask them if you can get them that product, and just make sure you're staying on top of reorders. And, the cost of this is higher. That's all there is to it. You're going to pay more with time and energy and money to maintain these accounts than you would a lot of other accounts as a function of the product you're moving through them. Okay, so this is one reason why we say think of restaurants as part of your portfolio. Okay, so think of all of your sales as kind of this segmented pie, where you have all this revenue coming in. Think about grocery stores. Think about CSAs. Think about restaurants. Think about farmers markets. All of these markets we've been talking about, I want you to consider them to be kind of one big market that you are selling to really regularly. And restaurants should be part of that. They shouldn't be the whole thing, right? They shouldn't be the whole pie. Now, some people, depending on their market, can make them a much larger chunk of that pie. Some of them could probably make up the whole pie. What do I know? We just don't live in an area personally where we can do that. But think about what's best for your business, what's wisest for your income streams, what's wisest for your sales throughout the year, and think about which markets serve your needs the best. And what's your style? I mean, maybe you just want to be a small farmer and you want to sell to restaurants because you get a kick out of, delivering really high quality produce to people who appreciate it. If that is your thing, if that is your culture, that's the market you go for. But for the folks that are more interested in making a living and very protective of their income streams, think about it as a part of the whole pie. And think about diversifying your markets and making sure that you're spread out in an intelligent way. Quality and value are incredibly important, okay? You're selling your value. You're not selling your product. You're selling your value. You're selling service. You're selling product. You're selling relationship. You're selling all of these things packaged into one deal. And I can't stress this enough. Sell your value, not your product. Sell your value, not your product. And value, you'll find, will allow you to charge much higher pricing than, say, someone like Shamrock who's just selling a product. Okay, you're selling more than a product. You're selling a lot more. So keep that in mind. That's pretty much it for today. If I can say anything, just keep those takeaways in mind. Repeat them a few times. Think about the value that you're bringing to the table. Think about how you handle pricing in that regard. Restaurants can be a great market, and I encourage all of you to pursue them. They're a very fast and easy market to get into. In that regard, they're way better than a lot of other things. There's not any paperwork. You go in, you talk to them. Sometimes you can start selling product to them 2 days later. So keep that in mind. And that's pretty much it. I just want to wrap up, and I think Chris Michael's going to start asking some of the questions that you guys have posted over the course of this. But that's Chris up there, and got Paul down below him and Noah, who is pretty much our greenhouse manager now. And of course, that's my ugly mug down there in the corner. We're in the bright agriculture. So, Chris, do you want to maybe start asking some of these questions, and we can get rocking and rolling, and
Yep,
see how many of these we can get through.
you bet. So, and before I get going, if you do have any questions, go ahead and enter them in the chat. I will try to monitor those as quickly as I can. Sometimes they get lost in the queue, but I will make sure that we get as many of those answers as we can today. So we have a couple here just right off the bat. Looks like some folks might be fairly new to us and to what we do, but they're just wondering, it says here, I'm interested in starting my system soon. Where can I find zip grow towers?
Um, yeah, so I mean, it's springtime. Everyone's thinking about getting going, especially if you're bootstrapping your way into a larger commercial system. Now is the time. We've got shade houses down in Colorado. They're running towers. We'll throw up greenhouses for them in the fall. If you're kind of in that situation, now is the time. You have to get started here pretty quickly for most markets. So if you're looking for towers, you can find them on our store. So we sell some kind of small starter, like 50 and 100 tower starter systems now on the store. So check them out there. And also, if you're interested in larger quantities, chat with us and we get you custom quotes at bulk pricing just through the office here.
And that is shop.brightagritech.com, just so we know. And so Carrie is asking kind of the specifics on taking towers to restaurants. She says, can you go into more detail on taking towers to the restaurants and kind of explain how that whole thing works?
Sure. So, it really depends on the crops that you're growing for restaurants. Some restaurants will just want small amounts of cut product that you deliver from the greenhouse, and that's great if that's what the account wants. If they do want live towers, of course, it's always much less labor intensive for you, and it's a lot easier. If they have outdoor patio space, that kind of thing, people can be really pumped up about putting um, a live tower outside of their restaurant and then cutting off of it. Like a lot of these locavore local foods restaurants now will have herb gardens. But what you can basically offer them is a really high quality vertical herb garden that gets exchanged as it's cut. So, one way to do that is to actually deliver towers directly to them, and we use springs. So springs are kind of like our standard, easy to start, very modular way to display towers at restaurants and keep them alive. Um, or the other option is using some kind of distribution, and we're looking into this down in Colorado. We're working with a distributor down there. We'll actually deliver our towers to stores. They can plug them into the spring systems. They lease the spring system, or they get the spring system, the use of it for free with so many orders, and they get to use it for as long as they maintain the account. And that's kind of a nice way to do it. And yeah, there seems to be some interest there. So there's a lot of ways to kind of address it and think about it, but you're really just limited by your imagination and kind of what your market is willing to do. So yeah, we just transport them either in a car or a truck and drop them off. And I
All
think I
right.
think we talked about that a little bit in the grocery store one. Some of the questions there were having to do with how specifically we deliver. So it's pretty rough right now. Towers on racks, either slid in the back of a delivery car or in the back of a truck. But we've got some really cool hardware coming out here pretty soon that will make that whole transportation thing a lot easier for these towers.
Right on. So we have a couple questions on just getting established with their connections and the relationships with farmers and chefs, or restaurants and chefs between the farmer. Um, Wayne is asking, do you have a typical questionnaire that you use when getting to know the chef and restaurant? If so, can we share that as a resource? I think that's something we could probably put
Yeah,
together, right?
yeah, we can put something together. So yeah, what we'll do is we'll put it together and we'll post it here. Um, Maybe send it out through our email list. And again, if you aren't on the email list, get on the email list. We send out tons of free kind of handouts and things on a regular basis through that list. That's how we disseminate our materials that we give away for free. I emphasize the word free because it requires absolutely nothing of you. I never understand why people are hesitant to get on that list because, send out nutrient deficiency keys and all sorts of crazy stuff that we put together. We spend a lot of time putting it together. We want it to get used. So if you're not on the list, get on the list. We'll send out that here. We'll try and get that done and send it out here in the next few days, week, I don't know, 2 weeks. But yeah, it's really not a complicated thing. When it comes to your chef, the big questions are, what do you need? Identifying your customer's need is always the first step towards getting an account, right? Because they're going to tell you exactly what they need. And it could be something they're frustrated. What frustrates you about your supply chain? What frustrates you about the product you're getting? What do you not like? What do you hate? And how can I help you have something that makes you happy? How can I help you get a product that delivers value? How can I help you get something that makes your life more convenient, better, that makes your customers happier, that improves things here? And that's always the big first question, right? Hey, I'm so and so. I have a farm here. I'm interested in selling local foods. They might kind of roll their eyes, whatever. And then you just lead in with, so where do you get your product now, and what is most frustrating about that process? What costs you the most and is really frustrating for you to get in? What spoils the fastest, and where do you have the most waste? All of these are questions that you start with. I promise you, if you can catch the chefs at a convenient time when they're not prepping for, service, then you've got a really good chance at them answering those questions for you. And it's just kind of the traditional sales spiel, right? You find out the customer's need, you identify what those needs are, you identify how you can address those needs, and you just kind of you cruise into that relationship. It is honest, it is straightforward, and it is very simple when you're approaching it from kind of a relational perspective. Your goal is not to be the used car salesman. Your goal is to fix their problem. And when you come at it from that perspective, you'd be amazed at how capable you can be at fixing their problem. So think about that.
All right, and Mike is asking kind of on top of that, is it a good idea to start establishing connections and relationships with restaurants before starting to grow your produce? He's starting to build a commercial greenhouse now and plans to start selling next spring.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, start those relationships as far in advance as possible. Now, the caveat there is once you start them, you have to maintain them, right? You can't just go to a chef and be like, hey, I've got this product. You want to buy it theoretically, 9 months from now, yada, yada, yada. Everyone will say, sure, theoretically, yes. The answer to any theoretical question is yes, right? That's the joke. So, the reality is, is if you go to that chef and you're like, hey, this is what I've got going on, you get them pumped up and excited about it. You don't want to start it too far in advance. You don't want to give them time to cool off. You want to start it enough in advance that they can get pumped about it and you can build anticipation about it, but not so far in advance that it's draining for you to call them up every 2 or 3 weeks and just say, hey, this is so and so checking in, and I'm still 6 months out from my farm. I just want to make sure you're on board. That's going to annoy them, right? That's going to bug them, and it gives them time for people to cool off. So think about that. Think about your sales cycle. Think about what's a realistic time frame, both for getting your product ready to go to market. And keep in mind, like I said before, these accounts can be some of the fastest accounts you can sell into for a small producer. Seriously, I mean, for a restaurant or for a grocery store, I mean, you're talking maybe 6 weeks for the paperwork to just go through. I mean, you're looking at a month and a half from the time you approach them to the time the paperwork's through, and maybe another week or two to work out all the details on how to sell into it. You need to start that in advance. These are accounts that you can show up at, and if you're like, hey, I've got this product, I've got fresh basil right now in the dead of winter, February, and I'll charge you $2 an ounce for it. This is the most aromatic, delicious stuff. Bring them a sample, let them taste it, smell it. That chef will, grind a leaf between his fingers and smell it and say, I want to buy it right now. I want to buy this stuff right now. It's the kind of account that you can start immediately. So keep that in mind too. It's going to be the shortest sales cycle of all the accounts you try to pick up. So you don't want to start it too far in advance, but at the same time, it's not bad to kind of get the word out there, start getting people excited about local foods. If anything, you can approach them and sell them on local producers, sell them on kind of this upsurging, class of small producers in your area, yada, yada, yada. Get them excited about the idea, and then, double whammy, come to them, 3 months later and say, hey, I noticed you were super pumped about local foods last time we chatted. I'm going to start my own farm, and I'm going to grow just for you. And that's going to floor them. That's going to give you an account. It's going to be a great relationship.
Bet. And some folks are asking, how they can pay us for our content. Like it's been so useful to them. They may not be able to buy towers at the moment, although they're planning to, but they just want to somehow give us something in return for everything we've given them. And honestly, what we can say is that's kind of our goal. we want to create the most useful content possible to help folks be as successful as they possibly can. And probably the best thing you can do right now is, just give us some kind of social share, give us like a like on YouTube or Facebook, and help us kind of spread the message of what we're doing, creating this brighter future of food. And any of those things feel like a real pat on the back to us, and kind of gives us the
Sure.
motivation to keep moving.
Well, that's in our minds, none of this content is free, right? I mean, we like producing this content. It can be a drag some weeks when we're stuck here at the office late and we want to go see our families. We've got to get this thing out the door. But at the same time, like the reality is this is an emerging market, and I was telling someone the other day, the paths are leading to us when it comes to production equipment. So, I mean, even if you're not interested now, you might be interested down the road. And the reality is, we've just got the best equipment. So, I mean, people will come to us eventually, and we'll start that relationship, and it all works out. So we're not worried about it. Share us, like us. That's enough for the time being. We just really appreciate the fact that people are excited about this and willing to tune in and get pumped up about the stuff that we're pumped up about.
Yes, and so a couple more questions here before we wrap up. Wayne has another question just about, I think you kind of mentioned this earlier, but just about kind of the daily maintenance that it takes to, run this restaurant account versus what it takes to do a grocery store account, for example.
Yeah, so I mean they're way more intensive, right? Again, the logistic costs for these small accounts are borne by the producer usually. So, instead of managing one produce manager, now you've got to have this relationship with 10 chefs to move the same amount of product. So this is one reason why we say the turnover rate, the fact that these accounts tend to, come into existence very quickly, and oftentimes, unfortunately, go out of existence very quickly when a chef moves or leaves or gets fired or whatever. It's one of the reasons why this should be a part of the whole. But one of those reasons too is just the cost of it. So it's a very accessible market. It's a very good margin market. It's not a super predictable market. Um, and the costs can be a little bit high when it comes to managing these accounts. I mean, if you're managing 10 restaurant accounts, and your goal is to spend half an hour just talking and getting feedback every week with the grower or the chef or the manager or whoever, I mean, that's 5 hours out of your week right there. So they tend to eat up time if you guys are doing it right. So if you're managing the account correctly, they eat up a lot of time. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, but they're super accessible and they're super fast sale.
Yeah, it sounds like if you're a farmer that's, willing to move quickly and relational to begin with, it sounds like these could be a great fit, especially, I mean, there's few things that are more rewarding than seeing your farm's name on some chef's menu, you know, at
Yeah.
a place where people are just raving about the food.
Well, and if you're involved with your community, that can be a great thing too. Not just for the restaurant, but for you. I mean, customers like here in town, people are always pumped to see our name on a restaurant's menu. Like that's a cool experience for them, and oftentimes it causes them to choose certain dishes over others. So, as you have a relationship in your community, that delivers more value to your customers as well if they're chefs, because their customers want to see that. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a good deal for everyone.
You bet. So it looks like that's probably about all the questions we have time for at the moment. We're just a little over time. Um, we've got a couple questions on finding that hub market info that you mentioned earlier. Maybe we can put that
Sure,
together, put that in an email as a follow up afterwards, if
no
unless you know off
problem.
the top of your head now. Yeah, that'll work. So, and as always, if you wanted to get in touch with us about starting your own vertical farm or bulk quantities of zip grow towers, please do get in touch with us. You can email me directly. I'm Chris at Brad Agritech. We can figure that out for you and get you started here soon. We are doing a lot of cool stuff coming up in the future. We're putting together a really cool online community where folks that are using our towers, folks that we call our upstart farmers, are going to be able to come online and share their issues, share their joys, what's working, kind of share their best management practices for their greenhouse, their operation, what's working for them, and it's a cool way to get involved, and we invite you all to join that community as you decide to make the switch to vertical. That should be really neat. So with that, I think we're almost wrapped up. Nate, do you have anything you want to sign off with?
Nope. I just want to say thanks so much for attending and giving me some time. And I really, really enjoy doing these things for you guys. You guys are so appreciative and you're so interested and you always have really intelligent questions. So I just want to thank you for coming. And I'll look forward to the next one. Again, the next webinar is going to be on compliance. So that'd be pretty fun. And then we're going to make sure we continue this webinar series through the summer. I'd like to do some interviews with some of our farmers so you guys can talk with them and hear some of the cool stuff that they're doing. And I'm just real excited about it. Hope you guys are excited too. And we'll talk to you guys. Talk to you later.
All right, we're going to sign off and just be looking for your emails. We'll send out a webinar recording link here soon. You can probably find it on our YouTube channel as well. So thanks and have a great weekend.